Christmas morning in my son's house. I'm standing in the hallway, holding my coffee, about to join everyone by the tree. That's when I hear Brandon whisper to his wife Amber in the kitchen. "After presents, we'll tell him. The nursing home has a bed ready Monday." Amber giggles. "Finally, we'll have the whole house to ourselves." My grandson Tyler asks what they're talking about. "Nothing, sweetie," Amber coos. "Just planning Grandpa's special trip." I stand there frozen, my coffee shaking in my hand. They have no idea what's coming. I took a breath and walked into the living room like I hadn't heard a thing. The Christmas tree lights twinkled in the corner, and Tyler was already tearing into a package wrapped in shiny red paper. He looked up at me with those bright eyes and yelled, "Grandpa, look, it's the robot I wanted." Brandon turned from the tree with this big smile plastered across his face. "Hey, Dad. Merry Christmas. Come sit down. We saved you the good chair." The good chair. The recliner I'd bought with my own money 6 months ago because the couch hurt my back. But I smiled and nodded, settling into it while Amber brought me a mug of hot chocolate I didn't ask for. Her smile was sugary sweet, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Here you go, Nestor," she said, using my first name like we were old friends instead of two people who'd been dancing around each other for 2 years. "Extra marshmallows, just how you like it." I thanked her and took a sip. It was too sweet, like everything else in this house. Too sweet, too fake, too polished. Let me back up and tell you how I got here. To this moment, sitting in a living room that should have felt like family but instead felt like a trap closing around me. 2 years ago, my wife Dorothy died. Cancer. It started in her lungs and spread everywhere before we even knew what was happening. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. The fastest and slowest 6 months of my life. We'd been married for 38 years. High school sweethearts from a little town in Pennsylvania. She was my whole world. After she passed, I was lost. The house we'd shared for decades felt empty, hollow. Every room echoed with her absence. I couldn't cook, couldn't sleep, couldn't figure out how to keep going. Brandon called me every day during those first few weeks, checking in, telling me he was worried. Then he suggested I come stay with him and Amber for a while, just until I got back on my feet. "You shouldn't be alone right now, Dad," he said. "We've got plenty of room. Tyler would love having you around more. It'll be good for all of us." It sounded reasonable. It sounded like love. So I sold the house. That house in Pennsylvania where Dorothy and I had raised Brandon, where we'd painted the kitchen 3 times and fixed the porch steps every spring. It sold for $270,000. It was paid off, every penny ours. I put the money in the bank and moved to Connecticut to live with my son. Brandon and Amber had bought this big colonial house 5 years earlier, right before Tyler was born. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a 2-car garage, and a yard that needed constant work. It was beautiful. It was also expensive. Brandon worked as an operations manager for a logistics company, and Amber did something with marketing from home. They made decent money, but the mortgage on this place was crushing them. I saw the stress in Brandon's face during my first week there. Saw the bills stacked on the kitchen counter, the way he'd go quiet when Amber talked about Tyler needing new shoes, or the furnace making funny noises. So I offered to help. What else was I going to do with the money? It was just sitting there, and I was living under their roof, eating their food. It seemed right. "Brandon," I said one night after Tyler had gone to bed, "let me contribute. I've got savings. Let me give you some money to help with repairs, pay down some debt." He protested at first, the way people do when they're too proud to accept help, but too desperate to refuse it. But eventually, he accepted. $80,000. I wrote him a check and told him it was a gift, no strings attached. Family takes care of family. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was agreeing to pay $1,500 a month toward the mortgage. "Just to cover your share," Brandon said. "You know, for the extra utilities, food, wear and tear, $1,500 a month. For 2 years, that's $36,000 on top of the $80,000 I'd already given him." At first, everything seemed fine. I had my own room upstairs, right next to Tyler's. I'd help with dinner, do the dishes, keep the place tidy. I wasn't a freeloader. I'd worked for the Postal Service for 37 years before retiring. I knew how to pull my weight. Tyler and I became close. I'd pick him up from school, help him with his math homework, teach him how to throw a baseball properly. On Saturdays, we'd go fishing at the lake a few miles away. He'd sit next to me on the dock with his little rod, talking about school and his friends and whatever cartoon he was obsessed with that week. Those moments felt pure, uncomplicated. But over time, things shifted. Small things at first. Amber started making comments about how I loaded the dishwasher wrong or folded the towels the wrong way. Brandon would sigh when I asked questions about the TV remote or forgot to close the garage door. They started talking around me instead of to me, like I was a piece of furniture that occasionally made noise. Then, about a year ago, they moved me to the basement. Tyler needs more space, Amber explained, carrying my clothes down the stairs in a laundry basket. He's getting older, needs room for his hobbies. You understand, right? The basement wasn't finished. It was cold and damp, with a concrete floor and walls that sweated in the summer. They put a bed down there, a cheap dresser, and a space heater that barely worked. I slept under 3 blankets and told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. Around the same time, the comments started getting meaner. Brandon called me old-timer with this edge to his voice, like it was a joke but also not a joke. Amber rolled her eyes when I talked, cutting me off mid-sentence to talk about something else. They stopped asking my opinion on anything, stopped including me in family decisions. I started noticing other things, too. Whispered conversations that stopped when I walked into a room. Brandon on his laptop late at night, closing the screen when I came upstairs for water. Papers spread across the dining room table that got shoved into a drawer the second they heard my footsteps. My gut told me something was wrong. I'd worked for the Postal Service long enough to know when people were hiding things. I just didn't know what. Then, 6 months ago, I found printouts in Brandon's office. I wasn't snooping. Not really. I was looking for a pen, and there they were in the trash can. Pages printed from websites about nursing homes. Places with names like Sunset Meadows and Golden Years Assisted Living. The pages had notes in Brandon's handwriting. How soon can they take him? And, do we need medical justification? That's when I knew I was in trouble. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I listened at doors. I kept track of their comings and goings. I noticed that Brandon's business trip seemed to involve a lot of lunches with lawyers. I saw Amber on the phone, her voice low and urgent, saying things like, "We just need to get through the holidays." 3 months ago, I made a decision. I went to an electronics store and bought 3 small cameras, the kind people use for home security. I installed them in the living room, kitchen, and hallway. Just the common areas, nothing private. I needed to know what they were planning. I needed proof that I wasn't imagining things. Then I called a lawyer, not someone local. I drove 2 towns over and found a small practice run by a man named Frank Morrison. Older guy, close to retirement, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I brought him all my financial documents, bank statements, canceled checks, the receipt for the $80,000 check I'd written Brandon, everything. Morrison spread the papers across his desk and spent an hour reviewing them while I sat there sweating in my coat. Finally, he looked up at me. "Nestor, who's on the deed for the house?" "Brandon, I assume." "It's his house." Morrison shook his head. "No, it's yours." I blinked. "What?" He showed me a document I'd signed 2 years ago when Brandon was buying the place. I remembered signing it. I thought it was some kind of co-signer thing, helping him qualify for the mortgage. But Morrison explained it differently. "Your previous lawyer, Dorothy's estate attorney, he structured this to protect your investment. You're the legal owner. Brandon has what's called a life estate. He can live there, but he can't sell it, can't mortgage it beyond what's already on it. And if he tries to force you out, the life estate is voided, and you get full, uncontested ownership." I sat back in my chair, dizzy. Brandon doesn't know this? Does he have a copy of this deed? I don't know. Maybe. It's been 2 years. If he does, he's not reading it carefully. Most people don't. They see their name and assume they're the owner. I left Morrison's office with copies of everything and a plan forming in my head. I kept recording. Hours and hours of footage, weeks of conversations. Brandon and Amber talking about me like I was a burden they couldn't wait to unload. Laughing about my cooking, mocking the way I walked, discussing my bank accounts like they were already theirs. The worst one was from 3 weeks ago. I was downstairs in the basement, but the camera in the kitchen picked up their voices clearly. Amber, once he's in the home, we can start moving his accounts into our names. He trusts Brandon. He'll sign anything. Brandon. The guy's sitting on almost $200,000. Can you imagine? That's Tyler's college fund. That's our vacation to Europe. That's everything. Amber, we just have to be smart about it. Play the concerned family. Make it seem like it's for his own good. They clinked wine glasses, celebrating my future imprisonment. So yeah, Christmas morning, when I heard them whispering about the nursing home having a bed ready by Monday, I wasn't surprised. I was prepared. I watched Tyler open his presents. I drank the too sweet hot chocolate. I smiled and nodded and played the role of the grateful, oblivious old man. And when Amber suggested we all sit down for a big family brunch before opening the rest of the gifts, I agreed. But after the dishes were cleared and Tyler was upstairs playing with his new toys, I stood up and said, "Before we finish the day, I'd like to show you all something. I put together a special home movie. Family Memories. I think you'll find it very interesting." Brandon and Amber exchanged a glance. Brandon shrugged. "Sure, Dad. Sounds great." I pulled out my laptop, connected it to the TV, and hit play. The first clip appeared on the screen. It was dated 3 months earlier, time-stamped in the corner. The view was from the camera I'd hidden on the bookshelf in the living room. Clear as day, you could see Amber sitting on the couch, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice came through the TV speakers, crisp and unmistakable. "No, listen, Diane. Once we get him into the nursing home, we'll have access to everything. The old fool trusts Brandon completely. He's signed over so much already. Getting the rest will be easy." On the couch next to me, Amber's face went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Brandon leaned forward. "Dad, what is this?" I didn't answer. I just let the next clip play. This one was from the kitchen, 2 months ago. Brandon was standing by the counter, phone on speaker. A man's voice I didn't recognize. "So you're looking at roughly how much in liquid assets?" "Brandon, at least 200,000, maybe more. He's got the money from selling his house, plus whatever he saved over the years. Social Security, pension. The guy's loaded." The voice. "And he's how old?" "Brandon, 62. Healthy. Could live another 20 years. Easy. But we're not waiting that long." They both laughed. On the couch, Brandon's face had turned red. "You recorded us?" "Dad, you can't just record people without their knowledge." I paused the video and turned to him. "Actually, in Connecticut, I can. One-party consent state. I'm the party. I consented." Amber stood up, her voice shaking. "This is insane. You've been spying on us." "Keep watching," I said, hitting play again. The next clip was from their bedroom, shot from the hallway camera that could just barely see through the cracked door. They were sitting on their bed, papers spread around them. "Amber, did you see his face when I told him his meatloaf was dry? Pathetic. I can't wait until he's someone else's problem." "Brandon, just a few more months. We'll get him evaluated, declare him incompetent, and then we control everything." "Amber, what if he fights it?" "Brandon, he won't. He's too old, too tired. He'll go quietly. They always do." I stopped the video again. The room was completely silent, except for the hum of the TV. Amber's hands were shaking. Brandon looked like he might be sick. "There's more," I said quietly. "Hours more. Weeks of you two talking about me like I'm already dead. Planning how to spend my money. Laughing about how pathetic I am." Brandon found his voice. "Dad, you don't understand. We were just venting. Everyone complains about family sometimes. It doesn't mean anything." "Doesn't mean anything?" I pulled out a folder from beside the couch. "How about this? The printouts from nursing homes you've been researching. The ones that say, how soon can they take him? And, do we need medical justification?" I tossed the papers onto the coffee table. They landed with a soft thud. Amber tried a different approach. Tears welled in her eyes. Nestor, we've been under so much stress. The mortgage, Tyler's expenses. We're drowning here. We thought maybe if you had professional care, it would be better for everyone. Better for everyone, or better for you? I stood up, pulled another document from my folder. Let's talk about the house. Brandon's eyes narrowed. What about it? Who owns it? We do. Amber and I bought this house 5 years ago. I unfolded the document and held it up. No, I own it. I'm the sole legal owner. You have what's called a life estate, which means you can live here, but you can't sell it, can't refinance beyond the existing mortgage. And if you try to force me out, the life estate is void and I get full, uncontested ownership. The color drained from Brandon's face. That's not possible. It's right here, signed and notarized. My lawyer made sure to protect my investment when you were buying this place. Remember? I co-signed. Except I didn't just co-sign. I became the legal owner with you as a resident. Amber grabbed the paper from my hand, scanning it frantically. Her lips moved as she read. When she looked up, her expression had changed. The fake tears were gone. Now there was something harder in her eyes. Calculation. This is elder abuse, she said slowly. Recording us without our knowledge, manipulating legal documents, holding the house over our heads. This is abuse against us. Brandon caught on quick. She's right. Dad, you're clearly paranoid. These cameras prove you're not thinking straight. Who does this to their own family? I felt my stomach drop. They were twisting it, turning my protection into evidence of instability. Those documents are probably fake anyway, Amber added. You made them up. You're confused. Probably dementia setting in. Brandon, we need to call someone. I'll call Todd, Brandon said, already pulling out his phone. He'll know what to do. Who's Todd? I asked. Our lawyer. Within 45 minutes, a man in an expensive suit was sitting in the living room. Todd Brennan. Sharp eyes, shark smile, leather briefcase. He reviewed the deed while Brandon and Amber hovered nearby, explaining their side. He's been recording us illegally, Amber insisted, making wild accusations. He's clearly not well. Brennan studied the deed, then looked at me. Mr. Nestor, these recordings may be inadmissible if my clients claim coercion or argue you manipulated them. As for the house, my clients will argue you made an implied gift. Possession is 9/10 of the law. I have proof of everything, I said. Bank statements showing I've paid them $116,000 over 2 years. Recordings of them planning to steal from me. Brennan smiled thinly. Mr. Nestor, those recordings show a family having private conversations, perhaps insensitive but not criminal. What is concerning is your behavior. Installing surveillance equipment in your son's home. Obsessing over financial arrangements that were likely gifts made willingly. These are signs of paranoia, possibly cognitive decline. I'm 62 years old and perfectly healthy. Are you? Brennan pulled out papers from his briefcase. My clients are filing for emergency guardianship. They're concerned for your safety and well-being. A court-appointed evaluator will assess your mental state. If they find you're unable to manage your affairs, your son will be granted guardianship and conservatorship. My heart started pounding. You can't do that. We can, and we are. You'll receive official notice within a few days. The hearing will be scheduled within 2 weeks. He stood, straightened his suit jacket. Mr. Brandon, Mrs. Amber, I advise you to change the locks tonight, for your safety. Our house, Brandon said. Our locks. It's my house, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Brennan handed Brandon a document. Cease and desist. Mr. Nestor, if you make any threats, install any more surveillance equipment, or harass my clients in any way, we'll seek a restraining order. Are we clear? I didn't answer. I just watched him walk out the door. After he left, Brandon turned to me. His expression was cold, controlled. You've got until morning to remove those cameras, Dad. Then we're changing the locks. For our safety and Tyler's. Brandon, please. I'm your father. You're a paranoid old man who's been spying on his own family. I don't even know who you are anymore." Amber crossed her arms. "We've been nothing but good to you. We took you in when you had nowhere else to go. We've put up with your moods, your complaints, your constant neediness. And this is how you repay us. I gave you $80,000, which you offered, which was a gift. We didn't ask you to do that. I've been paying your mortgage, as rent, for living here. That's what adults do, Nestor. They pay rent." I looked at my son, searched his face for any trace of the boy I'd raised. The kid I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, drove to soccer practice every Saturday morning. That boy was gone. In his place was a stranger. "Get some sleep, Dad," Brandon said. "You're going to need a clear head for what's coming." That night, I lay in my basement room, staring at the ceiling. The space heater hummed in the corner. Water dripped somewhere in the walls. I could hear Brandon and Amber moving around upstairs, their voices low but urgent. I'd thought I was prepared. I'd thought the recordings and the deed would be enough. But they'd outmaneuvered me. They'd made me into the villain, and now they were filing for guardianship, which meant they could control my money, my medical decisions, where I lived. They could put me in a nursing home whether I wanted to go or not. For the first time since Dorothy died, I felt truly alone. I woke up to the sound of locks clicking. It was 7 in the morning, the day after Christmas. My head ached from lack of sleep. I'd spent most of the night going through options in my mind, trying to figure out a way forward that didn't end with me losing everything. I climbed the basement stairs and tried the door to the main house. Locked. I knocked. No answer. Knocked louder. Finally, Brandon opened it. He was already dressed for work, coffee mug in hand. "You need to leave, Dad." "Brandon, please. Can we just talk about this?" "There's nothing to talk about. We've changed the locks. Your stuff is on the front lawn." I pushed past him into the hallway. In the living room, I could see cardboard boxes stacked by the door. My clothes, my books, my pictures of Dorothy, everything I owned, shoved into boxes like garbage. "You're throwing me out? We're protecting our family. Todd said we have every right to remove you from the property for our safety." "Your safety? I've never hurt anyone." "Emotional harm is still harm, Dad. Tyler's been having nightmares about your cameras. Amber's afraid to be in her own home. We can't live like this." Through the window, I could see neighbors starting to gather on the sidewalk. Mrs. Patterson from next door, the Johnsons from across the street, all watching as my life got dumped on the lawn. Amber appeared in the doorway, phone in her hand, recording. "Just documenting this for our lawyer. We want a record of his behavior." "My behavior? You're the ones kicking me out. We're setting boundaries," she said calmly, "which you've repeatedly violated. This is for your own good." I wanted to scream, wanted to grab Brandon by the shoulders and shake him until he remembered who he was, who I was. But I knew that would just give them more ammunition. So I walked out onto the front lawn, grabbed as many boxes as I could carry, and loaded them into my car. It took 4 trips. 4 trips while neighbors whispered and pointed, while Brandon stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, while Amber filmed everything. On my last trip, Tyler appeared at his bedroom window. Our eyes met. He looked confused, scared. He raised his hand in a small wave. I waved back, my throat tight. Then Amber saw him and pulled him away from the window. I drove to the Riverside Inn, a motel on the edge of town. $80 a night for a room that smelled like bleach and cigarettes. I unloaded my boxes, sat on the bed, and tried not to fall apart. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Nestor? This is Frank Morrison, returning your call." I'd left him a voicemail early that morning, desperate. "Mr. Morrison, thank you for calling back. I need your help. I'm on vacation until New Year's, but my paralegal said it sounded urgent." "What's going on?" I explained everything. The confrontation, the lawyer, the guardianship filing. Morrison listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sighed. "The deed is solid. The recordings are legal. But guardianship is a different animal. If they can convince a judge you're not competent to manage your affairs, they get control of everything. Your money, your medical decisions, where you live. How do I stop them? You fight it. You show up to the hearing with evidence of your competency. You bring your own medical evaluations, character witnesses, Proof that you're managing your life just fine. Can you represent me? I'm not back until January 2nd. The hearing will probably be scheduled before then, but I can refer you to someone. My partner, Susan Chen, specializes in elder law. I'll have her call you. Wait. When you say they'll get control of everything, do you mean the house too? If they get guardianship, they make decisions on your behalf. They could argue it's in your best interest to sell the house, use the money for your care. My stomach dropped. Even though I'm the legal owner, even then, a guardian acts as your legal proxy. They can do whatever a court approves. After we hung up, I sat in the motel room and tried to breathe. This was worse than I thought. They weren't just trying to kick me out, they were trying to take over my entire life. 3 days later, official papers arrived. Brandon and Amber had filed for emergency guardianship and conservatorship. The petition claimed I showed signs of dementia and paranoia, that I'd installed surveillance equipment obsessively, that I made irrational financial accusations, that I might be a danger to myself. The hearing was scheduled in 12 days. A court-appointed evaluator was assigned, Dr. Helena Frost. I had to meet with her within the week. Susan Chen never called. When I tried reaching Morrison's office, the paralegal said Susan was overloaded with cases and couldn't take on new clients. She gave me a list of other attorneys, but they all wanted retainers I couldn't easily access. My accounts were still in my name, but Brandon had already filed a motion claiming I was liquidating assets irresponsibly. By the time Frank Morrison returned from vacation, it was January 3rd, 4 days before my hearing. We met at a diner near his office. He looked tanned and rested. I looked like I'd been through a war. "I'm sorry about Susan," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "She's swamped, but I'm back now. Let's talk strategy." I showed him everything. The guardianship petition, the evaluation appointment with Dr. Frost, the bank statements showing my frozen accounts. Morrison read through it all, his expression darkening. "They're smart. They're not fighting the deed directly. They're fighting your competency. If they win, the deed doesn't matter, because they'll control you. Can they really do this? If the evaluator sides with them, if the judge believes you're not capable of managing your affairs, yes, they'll get full control. They can place you in a facility, manage your money, make all your decisions. How do I stop them? You prove you're competent. You show the judge you're rational, capable, that there's no reason for guardianship. But I'll be honest with you, Nestor. This is going to be expensive. Guardianship cases are complex. I'll need a $5,000 retainer to start, and it could go up to $20,000 depending on how hard they fight." I felt sick. "I'll figure it out." But that same afternoon, Brandon filed another motion. This one claimed I was dissipating assets to spite them. He pointed to the $5,000 I'd just paid Morrison as proof I was spending irrationally. The court issued a temporary freeze on my accounts. I could access $500 per week for living expenses, but nothing else without court approval. Morrison got the notification and called me immediately. "Without full payment, I can't prepare the defense you need. I'm sorry, Nestor. I can refer you to legal aid, but they're backlogged months. What am I supposed to do? Represent yourself, or hope you can find a pro bono attorney willing to take this on?" That's how I ended up sitting in legal aid's waiting room for 3 hours, only to be told they had a conflict of interest and couldn't help me. The law school clinic might take my case, but not until next semester started in late January. Too late. I was going to have to represent myself in a guardianship hearing against a professional lawyer, a 62-year-old retired postal worker against a shark in an expensive suit. The evaluation with Dr. Frost didn't help. She was professional, thorough, and skeptical. We met in her office, a sterile room with motivational posters on the walls and a box of tissues on her desk. She asked me about Dorothy's death, how I'd been coping, why I moved in with Brandon. "Why did you install cameras in your son's home?" "Because I suspected they were planning something." I was right. "But secretly recording your family, doesn't that seem extreme to you?" I needed proof. Proof of what? That they were planning to steal from me. She made notes on her tablet. "Do you often feel that people are plotting against you?" "No, just them. Because they were." "Mr. Nestor, I'm going to do some cognitive assessments. Just standard tests. She put me through memory exercises, problem-solving tasks, basic math. I passed everything easily, but at the end, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You're clearly cognitively intact, no signs of dementia, but your behavior, the surveillance, the recordings, the level of distrust, it shows a pattern I find concerning. I'm going to recommend supervised living and family therapy." Supervised living? You mean a nursing home? I mean a situation where there's oversight, where your decisions can be reviewed to ensure you're acting in your own best interest. My heart sank. She was giving Brandon exactly what he needed. Her report arrived 4 days before the hearing. Morrison got a copy and called me. "It's not good, Nestor. She's not recommending full guardianship, but she's not ruling it out either. She's leaving it up to the judge. That's a coin flip. What do I do? Pray or find a miracle?" But things got worse before they got better. Brandon and Amber found out about my life insurance policy. $100,000. Dorothy was listed as the primary beneficiary, but since she'd passed, it defaulted to my estate, which meant whoever had control of my affairs would control that money too. They also discovered my investment accounts, $85,000 in stocks and bonds that I'd been saving for retirement. They filed an emergency motion for conservatorship of my assets, claiming I was dissipating resources on frivolous legal battles instead of accepting help. The motion painted me as a stubborn old man spending thousands to fight my loving family. The court granted temporary conservatorship to a neutral third party, a court-appointed guardian ad litem named Richard Hughes. All my assets were frozen except for basic living expenses approved by Hughes, which meant I couldn't pay any attorney, even if I found one willing to help. Morrison had to officially withdraw from my case. "I'm sorry, Nestor. I can't work for free. I have a practice to run." I was alone. I spent my days at the public library, reading up on guardianship law, trying to prepare for a hearing I had no idea how to handle. At night, I'd return to the motel, microwave a frozen dinner, and lie awake thinking about how my life had fallen apart so completely. Then, 2 days before the hearing, I saw Tyler outside his school. I was driving past, not planning to stop, not planning to violate any rules. But there he was, waiting at the pickup line, and our eyes met through my car window. He saw me, started to wave. Then Amber appeared, grabbed his arm, and pulled him toward their car. She glared at me, pulled out her phone. That evening, I got served with a restraining order petition. Amber claimed I'd been stalking them at Tyler's school, claimed Tyler was having nightmares about my cameras. An emergency hearing was held the next morning. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. I had to stay at least 300 feet away from Brandon, Amber, Tyler, and the house. Violation meant jail. I sat in the courtroom and felt my heart break. I couldn't even see my grandson now. Couldn't accidentally run into him at the store or wave to him from my car. I was cut off completely. That night, I discovered Brandon had posted on Facebook a long, emotional post about dealing with a parent's mental health struggles. He didn't name me, but it was obvious. "Please pray for our family," it said. "My father is struggling with mental health issues and has become hostile toward us. We're heartbroken, but must protect our son. If you've dealt with a loved one's cognitive decline, you know how painful this is." The post had hundreds of shares and comments. Former friends of mine, people from our old neighborhood, all offering sympathy to Brandon, saying how hard dementia must be, praising him for being a good son. I tried to comment, to correct the record, but Brandon had blocked me. I was locked out of my own story. Meanwhile, Brandon filed an adverse possession claim on the house. His lawyer argued that since he'd lived there for 5 years, paid utilities, and maintained the property, he had a claim to ownership regardless of the deed. If they got guardianship, they could argue I'd abandoned my rights. Morrison had warned me about this before he withdrew. They're weaponizing the legal system against you, and you don't have the resources to fight back. I was staying at the Riverside Inn, eating cereal for breakfast and ramen noodles for dinner, watching my money drain away at $500 a week. My blood pressure was through the roof. The motel doctor said I was at risk for a stroke or heart attack if I didn't reduce my stress. "How?" I'd ask him. "How am I supposed to reduce stress?" He had no answer. 3 days before the hearing, I was sitting in the library, surrounded by law books I barely understood, trying to prepare some kind of defense. I felt like I was drowning. Then a woman approached my table. Early 30s, professional but approachable, with kind eyes and a leather bag slung over her shoulder. "Mr. Nestor? My name is Claire Hamilton. I'm an attorney with the Elder Justice Initiative." I looked up, too exhausted to even hope. "What's that?" "We're a non-profit that handles cases of elder financial abuse. Pro bono. I've been following your case through the court filings. They're public record, and I think you're being defrauded by your son and daughter-in-law." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of something like hope. "I'd like to help you," she continued, "but I have to be honest. I've only been practicing for 3 years. This is a complicated case, and I've never handled something this big before. I'll do my best, but I can't promise anything." 3 years is better than nothing," I said. "When can we start?" She sat down, pulled out a legal pad. "Right now, we have 2 days to get ready. Let's not waste them." Claire worked fast. We spent the entire day in the library, going through every document I had. Bank statements, the deed, Morrison's notes, the recordings. She watched every clip, took notes, asked questions. "This is damning evidence," she said. "But we need more. We need to show a pattern. Has Brandon done anything like this before?" "Not that I know of." "What about Amber? Do you know anything about her past?" I shook my head. "Brandon met her at work about 8 years ago. They got married fast, within a year. I never really got to know her before Dorothy got sick. I'm going to do some digging. Can you get me Amber's maiden name?" I remembered it from the wedding invitation. "Walsh. Amber Walsh." Claire made a note. "I'm also hiring a private investigator. His name's Jack Riley. Used to be a cop. He works with our organization sometimes. He's good at finding things people want to keep hidden." "I can't pay you," I said quietly. "My accounts are frozen. That's why it's called pro bono, Nestor. You're not paying me. Our organization is funded by grants and donations. We exist for cases like yours." That night, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not quite hope, but maybe the possibility of hope. But the next morning, I woke up to my phone ringing. Unknown number. "Mr. Nestor?" A woman's voice. Professional. "This is Amanda from Dr. Helena Frost's office. I'm calling to let you know the doctor's report has been filed with the court." My stomach twisted. "And the doctor has determined that while you show no signs of cognitive impairment, your behavior patterns suggest paranoid ideation and obsessive tendencies. She's recommending supervised living arrangements and family therapy. She's leaving the final determination regarding guardianship to the judge's discretion." After she hung up, I sat on the motel bed and put my head in my hands. Claire had said the evaluation report was critical. If it had been fully in my favor, the case would have been much easier. If it had been fully against me, we could have argued she was wrong. But this lukewarm middle ground was the worst possible outcome. It gave the judge room to go either way. Claire called an hour later. She'd seen the report too. "It's not ideal," she said, "but we can work with it. The important thing is, she found you cognitively intact. No dementia, no mental illness. That's huge. But she's saying, I'm paranoid. We'll argue that your behavior was a reasonable response to actual threats. You weren't paranoid. You were right. They were planning to exploit you. Will the judge see it that way?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But we're going to give it everything we've got." That afternoon, Jack Riley called. He'd been digging into Amber's background, and he'd found something. 7 years ago, Amber was married to a guy named Patrick Crenshaw. It ended badly. His mother, Carol Crenshaw, sued Amber for financial exploitation, claimed Amber manipulated Patrick, isolated him from family, tried to access Carol's bank accounts. The case was settled out of court and sealed. Can we get the records? Not easily. Sealed means sealed. But I tracked down Carol Crenshaw. She lives in Rhode Island now. I called her, explained your situation. She wants to talk to you. Claire and I drove to Rhode Island the next day. Carol lived in a tidy ranch house with flower boxes in the windows and a garden gnome by the front door. She was 78 years old, sharp as a tack, and angrier than anyone I'd ever met. "That woman destroyed my family," Carol said, sitting across from us in her living room with a cup of tea. "I tried to warn Patrick, tried to tell him she was using him. He wouldn't listen. Within 6 months of them getting married, he stopped returning my calls, stopped visiting. Then I started noticing money missing from accounts Patrick had access to as my power of attorney. Small amounts at first, 100 here, 200 there, then bigger withdrawals." "What did you do?" Claire asked. "I hired a lawyer. We found out Amber had convinced Patrick to move money around, told him I was getting confused and needed their help managing things. All lies. I'm sharper now than most people half my age. We took it to court. Amber's lawyer pushed for a settlement. We agreed because I just wanted her out of our lives. But the damage was done. Patrick believed her version of things, believed I was a bitter old woman trying to control him. We haven't spoken in 6 years." Claire leaned forward. "Would you be willing to testify at Nestor's hearing? Tell the judge what Amber did to you?" Carol didn't hesitate. "Yes. I'll do whatever it takes to stop her from doing this to someone else." We left Rhode Island with Carol's sworn affidavit and a powerful witness. For the first time, I felt like we had a real chance. But then Jack called again. He'd found something else. Something about Brandon. "Your son's been embezzling from his employer," Jack said. "I've got bank records showing fake vendor payments, invoices for services never rendered. He's been skimming for about a year, roughly $40,000. I felt sick. "Are you sure?" "Positive. The paper trail is clear. He set up shell companies, approved payments to himself. His company hasn't caught on yet, but they will." Claire added this to our evidence file. "This shows motive. They're desperate for money. That's why they're targeting you." But the night before the hearing, everything fell apart. It was 10:30 p.m. I was in my motel room, going over notes with Claire on the phone, when someone started pounding on my door. "Police. Open up." I opened the door to find 2 officers, hands on their belts, faces stern. "Mr. Nestor, we have a warrant for your arrest." "For what?" "Assault and battery, breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order." "Let's go." At the police station, I found out what had happened. Brandon was there, paramedics examining him. He had visible bruises on his face, a torn shirt, blood on his collar. Amber was next to him, crying, being comforted by a female officer. Their story: I'd broken into the house through the basement window around 10:30 p.m. I'd confronted Brandon in the garage. When he'd asked me to leave, I'd attacked him, pushed him down the concrete steps. Tyler had witnessed it and was now traumatized. Amber had called 911. "That's not true," I said. "I was at the motel. I never left." "Can anyone verify that?" the officer asked. I thought about it. The motel clerk had seen me come in around 8 p.m., but I hadn't seen anyone after that. My room had a back exit. Theoretically, I could have left without being seen. "I didn't do this," I insisted, but the evidence was stacked against me. Brandon's injuries looked real. Amber's 911 call was on record. Tyler had given a statement saying he'd heard his grandfather yelling. The basement window was broken, and they'd found my old work jacket on the property. "That's my jacket, but I haven't seen it in weeks. They took it when they threw me out. They're framing me." The officer looked skeptical. "Sir, you're being charged with assault and battery, breaking and entering, and violating a restraining order. Bail is set at $25,000. I couldn't make bail. My accounts were frozen, and I had no one to call. I spent the night in jail." Claire visited early the next morning. The hearing was in 8 hours. She looked devastated. "They outplayed us, Nestor. This arrest makes their case. You're in jail for assaulting your son. How do we argue you're competent and stable when you're literally behind bars?" "I didn't do it. I believe you. But how to prove it?" We sat in silence, separated by bulletproof glass, both of us out of ideas. Then, at 3 in the morning, my phone rang in the property room. The guard brought me to the phone. It was Claire, breathless. "Nestor, Jack found something. A traffic camera on Main Street, 2 blocks from your motel. It captures the intersection. So, your motel is 3 miles from Brandon's house. The only route is through that intersection. We checked every frame from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. No vehicle matching your car description passed through. I don't have a car anymore. I sold it. Exactly. And the bus stops running at 9 p.m. There's no way you could have gotten to Brandon's house and back. I felt a flicker of hope. That's good, right? It's better than good. And there's more. Jack pulled the 911 call recording. It's time-stamped at 10:42 p.m. On the call, you can hear Brandon in the background, yelling in pain. Fresh injuries. He's actively bleeding. I don't understand. If you allegedly attacked him at 10:30 and fled, and police arrived at 10:50, there's a timing problem. Jack consulted a forensic expert. Brandon's injuries are consistent with being sustained 10 to 15 minutes before the 911 call. Not during an altercation with you. It hit me. They staged it. Exactly. Brandon hurt himself, or Amber hurt him, right before calling 911. They timed it perfectly to frame you. Can you prove it? We have one more piece. Jack found footage from a neighbor's Ring doorbell across the street. It shows Amber and Brandon in their garage at 10:15. Garage door closed. No one else present. At 10:40, the garage door opens and Amber runs out screaming for help. No sign of you anywhere. For the first time in days, I let myself believe we might actually win. The emergency hearing started at 9 a.m. in a different courtroom than I'd expected. Judge Martha Pemberton presiding, same judge who'd issued the restraining order. The room was packed. There was a journalist from the local paper in the back row. Carol Crenshaw had flown in and was sitting behind Claire. Jack Riley was there too, a folder of evidence in his lap. I was brought in wearing handcuffs. Brandon was already seated at the plaintiff's table with Todd Brennan, his face bandaged, arm in a sling. Amber sat next to him, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. They looked like victims. I looked like a criminal. Judge Pemberton reviewed the docket. We're here to address the assault charges filed last night and to finalize the guardianship petition. Mr. Brennan, you may proceed. Brennan stood, buttoned his suit jacket. Your Honor, Mr. Nestor's violent actions last night prove beyond any doubt that he's a danger to himself and others. His son is hospitalized. His grandson is traumatized. We respectfully request immediate emergency guardianship and a psychiatric evaluation. Claire stood. Your Honor, I have evidence that will completely exonerate Mr. Nestor and expose the true criminals in this courtroom. Judge Pemberton raised an eyebrow. That's a serious accusation, Counselor. You'd better be able to back it up. I can, Your Honor. Claire started with the traffic camera footage. She'd had it loaded onto a laptop, connected to the courtroom's display. The timestamp showed 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Car after car passed through the intersection, but none that could have been mine. Mr. Nestor no longer owns a vehicle, Claire explained. He sold it 2 months ago when his funds became limited. The bus route stops running at 9 p.m. There is no possible way he could have traveled 3 miles to his son's residence and back during the time of the alleged attack. Brennan objected. He could have walked. He could have gotten a ride. 3 miles in 30 minutes? In January? At night? My client is 62 years old, and who would have given him a ride at that hour? The motel clerk confirms Mr. Nestor was alone all evening. Judge Pemberton studied the footage. Continue, Counselor. Next, Claire played the 911 call. Amber's panicked voice filled the courtroom. My father-in-law attacked my husband. He's bleeding. Please send help. In the background, Brandon's groans were clearly audible. Loud, pained, immediate. Claire paused the recording. This call was made at 10:42 p.m. According to Brandon's statement, Nestor allegedly attacked him at 10:30 and then fled. Police arrived at 10:50, but listen to Brandon's injuries on this call. He's in acute pain, fresh trauma. I've had a forensic expert review the recording and the medical photos. His assessment is that Brandon's injuries are consistent with being sustained 10 to 15 minutes before this call was made, not 30 minutes earlier. She submitted the forensic report. Judge Pemberton read it, her expression unreadable. Brennan stood. Your Honor, this is speculation. Injuries don't have precise timestamps. Actually, they do, Claire said. Bruising patterns, blood coagulation, Swelling rates. It's not exact, but it's close enough to show a discrepancy. Then came the Ring doorbell footage. Jack had cleaned up the image quality, and it was crystal clear. 10:15 p.m. The garage door was closed. You could see shadows moving inside. At 10:40, the door opened, and Amber ran out, screaming. "Where's Mr. Nestor in this footage?" Claire asked. "If he broke in, attacked Brandon, and fled, where is he? The camera captures the entire front of the property. He's nowhere." The courtroom was silent. Brandon and Amber exchanged glances. Brennan was flipping through papers, looking for a counter-argument. Judge Pemberton leaned forward. "Mr. Brennan, how do you explain these discrepancies?" "Your Honor, the cameras could have missed him. Technology isn't infallible. All 3 cameras, traffic, doorbell, and the lack of any transportation, that's a lot of missed footage." Claire wasn't done. "Your Honor, I'd like to call a witness. Mrs. Carol Crenshaw." Carol stood, was sworn in, and took the stand. She was composed, dignified, and furious in the best way. Claire walked her through her testimony. 7 years ago, Amber married Carol's grandson. Within months, Amber isolated him from family, tried to access Carol's bank accounts, convinced the grandson that Carol was confused and needed them to manage her affairs. "It was all lies," Carol said, her voice steady. "I'm 78 years old and I run my own finances better than most people half my age. Amber was trying to steal from me. When I fought back, she convinced my grandson I was the problem. I haven't spoken to him in 6 years. Brennan cross-examined her. "Mrs. Crenshaw, isn't it true that you harassed your grandson and his wife?" "No. I protected myself from a con artist. The case was settled. That suggests both sides had fault. The case was settled because I wanted her out of my life. That doesn't mean I was wrong." Claire called Jack Riley next. He presented the embezzlement evidence. Bank records showing fake vendors, invoices for services never rendered. $40,000 funneled from Brandon's employer into accounts controlled by Amber. "Why would they need this money?" Claire asked. "Because they're drowning in debt," Jack said. "Mortgage is 3 months behind. Credit cards maxed out. They need cash, and they need it fast." Brandon's employer's CFO was sitting in the gallery. Claire had Jack notify the company the day before. The CFO stood. "Your Honor, we were unaware of this. We conducted an emergency audit last night. If these allegations are true, we will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law." Brandon went pale. Amber's hands started shaking. Judge Pemberton turned to Brandon. "Mr. Nestor, do you have an explanation for these bank records?" Brandon stammered. "Those are business expenses, legitimate payments, to companies that don't exist." I'd have to review my records." Amber suddenly stood up. "Your Honor, this is all a distraction. My father-in-law is the one on trial here, not us." "Sit down, Mrs. Nestor," Judge Pemberton said coldly. Then the judge looked at Brandon. "Did you stage the assault?" "No, he attacked me." "With what magic?" "The evidence shows he had no way to get to your house. The cameras show no one entered your property. The timing of your injuries doesn't match your story." Silence. Amber blurted out. "Maybe the cameras are wrong." Judge Pemberton fixed her with a stare. "Multiple independent sources? All wrong? I find that highly unlikely." She turned to the bailiff. "Please ask the detectives on standby to come in." 2 plainclothes officers entered. Judge Pemberton addressed them directly. "Detectives, based on the evidence presented here today, I'm requesting an immediate investigation into Brandon and Amber Nestor for filing a false police report, perjury, and attempted elder financial abuse." As the detectives approached the plaintiff's table, Amber broke. "It was his idea," she shouted, pointing at Brandon. "All of it. The cameras, the setup, framing his father. I didn't want to do it." "Shut up," Brandon hissed. "No, I'm not going to jail for this. You planned everything." Brandon lunged at her. The detectives grabbed him, pulled him back. The courtroom erupted in chaos. The bailiff called for order. Judge Pemberton slammed her gavel. "Enough." The room fell silent. Judge Pemberton looked at Brandon and Amber with disgust. "In all my years on the bench, I have rarely seen anything this despicable. You attempted to rob your own father, frame him for assault, and exploit the legal system to do it. She turned to the guardianship petition. The petition is dismissed. Immediately. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order protecting Mr. Nestor from both of you. You are to have no contact with him whatsoever. She addressed the financial issues. All of Mr. Nestor's accounts are to be unfrozen, immediately. Full access restored. The conservatorship is dissolved. Finally, she looked at me. Mr. Nestor, you are free to go. I apologize on behalf of this court for what you've been put through. Your son and daughter-in-law will face the full consequences of their actions. The handcuffs came off. Claire hugged me. Carol shook my hand. Jack gave me a nod. As I walked out of the courthouse, I saw Gerald, my brother, standing by the door. He looked ashamed. "Brother, I'm so sorry," he said. "I was wrong. I should have believed you." I looked at him for a long moment. "Yes, you should have." I walked past him into the cold January air. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and paperwork. Brandon and Amber were charged with multiple crimes: filing a false police report, perjury, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and fraud. Brandon's employer fired him immediately and filed their own criminal complaint for embezzlement. The DA's office took my case seriously. They built an airtight prosecution with the evidence Claire and Jack had gathered. Brandon and Amber tried to flip on each other, each claiming the other was the mastermind. But it didn't matter. They were both guilty. Tyler was placed temporarily with Amber's parents, decent people who were horrified by what their daughter had done. They called me, apologized profusely, said they had no idea. I believed them. With my accounts unfrozen, I paid Claire's organization a donation. Not payment for services, they wouldn't accept that, but a contribution to help them continue their work. $10,000. It was worth every penny. I also went back to the house. My house. The one with my name on the deed. Brandon and Amber had been ordered to vacate immediately. Their belongings were already being moved out when I arrived with a police escort. I walked through the rooms, remembering the past 2 years. The basement where I'd slept on cold concrete. The kitchen where I'd overheard their schemes. The living room where I'd played with Tyler. Every room held painful memories. I called a realtor that afternoon. "I want to sell." "Are you sure?" she asked. "This is a beautiful property. Great neighborhood." "I'm sure." The house listed on a Thursday. By Monday, I had 3 offers. I accepted the highest, $420,000, more than enough to start over. While the sale was processing, I stayed at a better hotel, not the Riverside Inn with its stained carpet and broken heater, but a decent place with room service and a view of the river. I slept in a real bed, ate real food, started to feel human again. Gerald called me several times, left voicemails apologizing. Finally, I called him back. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I was a coward. I believed the easy lie instead of trusting you. You were my brother. You were supposed to have my back. I know. I failed you. I failed Dorothy's memory. If you never speak to me again, I'd understand." I thought about Dorothy, thought about what she'd say if she were here. She always believed in second chances, believed people could change if they really wanted to. "I forgive you," I said finally. "But trust takes time to rebuild." "I have time," Gerald said, "as much as you need." The house sold in 43 days. I walked out with a check for $420,000 after paying off the mortgage and covering the realtor's fees. I deposited it into my account and stared at the balance. More money than I'd had in years. I could have stayed in Connecticut, could have found an apartment, stayed close to Tyler. But every street reminded me of betrayal. Every grocery store, every park, every corner held memories I wanted to leave behind. So I drove north, spent 2 weeks visiting small towns in Vermont, looking for a place that felt right. I found it in a town called Woodstock, a retirement community called Mountain View Village, not a nursing home, an independent living community for active seniors. Apartments, not rooms, a woodworking shop, a library, a community garden, people who were done with careers but not done with life. I bought a 2-bedroom condo on the 3rd floor. Big windows with views of green mountains, a kitchen with new appliances, a balcony where I could drink my coffee in the morning and watch the sun rise. I moved in during March, when the snow was melting and everything smelled like mud and new growth. I met my neighbors, people like me, retired teachers, nurses, accountants, people who'd lived full lives and were now figuring out what came next. I joined the woodworking club, started making small things, a jewelry box for a neighbor whose wife had passed, a chess set for the community room, a birdhouse for my balcony. I joined the book club, read things I'd never made time for when I was working. Poetry, history, novels that made me think. I made friends, real friends, people who didn't want anything from me except companionship. For the first time since Dorothy died, I felt like I could breathe. Gerald visited in June. We went fishing at a lake nearby, sat on the dock like we'd done as kids growing up in Pennsylvania. We didn't talk much, just cast our lines and watched the water. "You seem good," he said after a while. "I'm getting there. I'm proud of you. For fighting back. For not giving up." "I almost did," I admitted. "There were nights I wanted to just sign whatever they wanted and be done with it. But you didn't." "No, I didn't. We stayed until the sun set, then drove back to my condo and had dinner. It wasn't perfect between us. There was still hurt, still distance, but it was a start." 3 years passed. I settled into my life in Woodstock, made more friends, took up hiking, learned to cook properly, not just the basics, but real food. I even started dating a woman named Patricia from the book club. Nothing serious, just companionship. Someone to have dinner with, go to movies with, talk to. I thought about Brandon sometimes, wondered how he was doing. I'd heard through Gerald that he'd been sentenced to 3 years in prison for the embezzlement and elder abuse charges. Amber got 2 years in probation. They'd lost custody of Tyler, who was living full-time with Amber's parents now. I felt sad about that. Not for Brandon and Amber, they'd made their choices, but for Tyler. He was the innocent one in all of this. Then, one day in October, a letter arrived, forwarded from my old address in Connecticut. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, a child's handwriting. "Dear Grandpa Nestor, I'm 12 now. Mom and Dad are in prison. I live with Grandma and Grandpa Walsh. They're nice. They told me the truth about what happened, about what Mom and Dad did to you. I'm so sorry, Grandpa. I didn't know. They told me you were sick and confused. They told me to be scared of you. But I remember fishing with you. I remember you helping me with homework. I remember you teaching me to ride my bike. You were never mean. You were never scary. I was wrong to say those things in court. I'm really, really sorry. Do you still like fishing? Can I come visit you this summer? I want to see you again. I miss you. Love, Tyler." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Then I sat down and wrote back. "Dear Tyler, I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. Yes, I still fish. Yes, you can visit this summer. I'd like that very much. I have a guest room with your name on it. Love, Grandpa." Tyler visited in July. His grandparents drove him up, stayed for coffee, then gave us space. Tyler was taller now, voice starting to crack, that awkward age between boy and teenager. But his eyes were the same, bright, curious, kind. We went fishing at the same lake where I'd gone with Gerald. Sat on the dock, cast our lines, didn't catch much, but it didn't matter. "I'm sorry I lied," Tyler said quietly. "You were scared. You were a kid. I don't blame you. I should have known better." "Tyler, look at me." I waited until he met my eyes. Adults are supposed to protect children, not the other way around. Your parents put you in an impossible situation. That's on them, not you. We sat in silence for a while. "Are you happy here?" Tyler asked. I looked around. The mountains, the lake, the clean air, the life I'd built from the ruins of the old one. "Yeah," I said. "I am." Tyler visited twice more that year. Then the next year. By the time he was 15, he was coming up every school break. His relationship with Brandon was complicated. He visited his father in prison a few times. but it was strained. Brandon never really apologized, never really took responsibility. Eventually, Tyler stopped going, but our relationship healed. Slowly, carefully, like a broken bone that sets stronger than before. The civil lawsuit took years to resolve. My lawyer sued Brandon and Amber for damages, for the money they'd stolen, for the emotional distress. We won. $160,000 in damages. I donated every penny to the Elder Justice Initiative, Claire's organization, so they could help other people like me. Now, I'm 65 years old. I wake up every morning in my condo in Vermont. I make coffee on my balcony. I watch the mountains turn gold in the sunrise. I have friends. I have hobbies. I have Tyler back in my life. I have my dignity. Brandon is out of prison now. He's living in a halfway house somewhere in Massachusetts. We haven't spoken. I don't think we ever will. Some relationships break so completely, they can't be fixed. That's okay. I've made peace with it. Amber is on probation, living with her parents, working at a grocery store. I hope she's learned something. I hope she's changed. But that's not my problem anymore. People ask me sometimes if it was worth it. The fight, the pain, the months of fear and uncertainty, the loss of my son. And I tell them the truth. I lost my son. Maybe forever. That breaks my heart every day. There's a hole in my life where Brandon used to be, where the boy I raised, the kid I taught to ride a bike and throw a baseball, used to exist. That boy is gone. In his place is a stranger I don't recognize and don't particularly like. But I didn't lose myself. I didn't let them make me believe I was less than I am. I didn't let them take my dignity, my autonomy, my right to make my own choices about my own life. Dorothy used to say, "Stand tall, even when they want you to kneel." I think about that a lot. I think about what she would have done in my situation. And I know she would have fought. She would have stood tall. She wouldn't have gone quietly into whatever prison they'd prepared for me. I'm 65 now. I have friends here in Woodstock. Good people who like me for who I am, not for what I can give them. I have hobbies. Woodworking keeps my hands busy. Hiking keeps my body strong. Reading keeps my mind sharp. I have Tyler back in my life, and that means everything. I have my dignity. No one can take that unless you let them. If you're facing something like this, if you're dealing with family betrayal or elder abuse or people trying to make you feel small and helpless, listen to me. Document everything. Every conversation, every transaction, every promise made and broken. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And find people who believe you. Lawyers like Claire, investigators like Jack, advocates who fight for elders who can't fight for themselves. The system isn't perfect. I almost lost. There were moments when I thought I would lose, when the weight of it all felt like too much. But truth has weight. It bends things eventually. If you hold on long enough, if you keep fighting, the truth comes out. I sold that house in Connecticut, got a good price for it. But the real value wasn't in the money. It was in knowing that I could walk away on my own terms, that I could start over, that I could build a life that was mine, not one imposed on me by people who saw me as a burden or a bank account. I found a home, not in a building, though I love my condo, but in knowing who I am, in being comfortable in my own skin, in having relationships based on love and respect, not obligation or exploitation. That's the win they can never take away. Every morning, I sit on my balcony with my coffee. There's a photo of Dorothy on the table beside me. I talk to her sometimes, tell her about my day, about Tyler's latest visit, about the project I'm working on in the woodshop. I did it, I tell her. I stood up. I won. And I swear, sometimes I can feel her smile, feel her pride, feel her love surrounding me, like the morning Sunday. I'm alone in many ways. No wife, no son, but I'm not lonely. There's a difference. Lonely is feeling empty, even when surrounded by people. Alone is being comfortable in your own company. I've learned to be alone without being lonely. I have a community here, people who check on me, who invite me to dinner, who call when they haven't seen me in a few days. Real community, not the fake kind that falls apart the moment you need help. Tyler is coming to visit next month. He's 17 now, thinking about colleges. Smart kid, kind kid. He wants to study environmental science, maybe work in conservation. I'm proud of him. Proud of the man he's becoming, despite the garbage his parents put him through. We're planning a fishing trip, just the two of us. A weekend at a cabin by a lake in New Hampshire. We'll cook over a fire, sleep under the stars, catch fish we'll throw back. We'll talk about his future, his dreams, his fears, and I'll tell him the same thing I wish someone had told me when I was his age. Stand tall, even when they want you to kneel. Your life is yours. Don't let anyone take it from you. Fight for what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, and know that you're stronger than you think. We all are. Before I go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to stand up to family? Have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours against people who were supposed to love you? How did you handle it? What advice would you give to someone going through something similar? Leave a comment below. Share your story. Maybe your experience will help someone else who's struggling. Maybe someone in the comments will say exactly what you need to hear today. And if this story moved you, if it made you think or feel something, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future stories. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's fighting their own battle and needs to know they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you find the strength to stand tall. You find people who believe you. You find your way home. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And remember, your dignity is yours. Don't let anyone take it.